Welcome back to the Autopilot On podcast, everybody. It's been a little while, but we're glad to be back. Get an episode in here in February. And how you doing, John?
I'm doing good, man. I'm hanging in there. Recovered from going to my yearly sim check ride and getting
Mm.
sick halfway through. So that was brutal.
Tell us
But
about that. That's wild.
it's the first time this has ever happened to me where I got like brutally sick. So I guess I got the influenza B strand because the way it worked out was I got in and basically the first night I landed was fine, and then the next night after we do 1 day of remedial ground training, and I felt fine. It was perfectly good, and then I woke up the next day and kind of just progressively throughout the day, I was noticing just more and more kind of. I mean, everyone's had the flu, so you just start to get run down, and by the middle of the day, around 4 p.m., I actually door dashed a couple things from CVS, just a thermometer too, because I was like, I actually need to know if I'm sick or not. And I got the thermometer, it was like 102.7. It was pretty high. And so, I mean, I texted you. I was like, I think I need to call in sick for this. And you're like, yeah, don't even worry about it. So, anyways, I call into scheduling. They're like, yeah, we don't deal with that kind of stuff. You're like, you need to call the flight operations department. I was like, okay. So I give them a call and they asked if I was just going in for the first day, which is like maneuvers kind of thing, and then the second day was the actual check ride. I was like, "Well, I have 102.7-degree fever, so I'm gonna assume I'm probably gonna be out for the next couple days."
Yeah.
And then I just flew home the last day, and they have yet to call me back. So my next month is my must-go month for training, so I don't really know where to go from here. I think they're gonna give me a call or something like that and reschedule, but they're gonna have to take off some of my day turns next month for that, I assume, or I dequal, and then they have the luxury of figuring out my schedule from there.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Then you get a vacation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then another thing too is I have my next baby is going to be born in early May or late April. So I almost don't know if it's a good thing to dequal in that sense because then they're gonna have to fit me into training. But then if I take FMLA, technically I would be gone for a long time. So I don't really know if I want to go into a check ride where I just haven't been present for like 3 months. I don't know how well
Hmm.
that would go. It's a hard thing though, like, where I really did not wanna call out sick for that event just because, you fly into wherever you're doing training and then you're ready to go. You've done the studying, you've went to the ground school already, and all you have to do is do 2 different simulator events, and you're good for the rest of the year.
Right.
So, for me, I was just like, "I'm already here." I had the best sim partner ever. He's a guy I fly with a ton in the base. He's amazing person, and then also he's a really competent pilot. So I had a phenomenal person I was gonna do the sim with. So I really did not wanna do that, but, what can you do? I'm gonna get 1, I'm not gonna be able to perform, and then secondly, I mean, I'm gonna get everyone sick. Literally, we're in a trapped box that has very little recirculated air. So,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's gonna get sick from that. So,
Right.
I mean, I don't wanna do that.
Oh, I'm willing to bet right now the whole training center's passing around cooties because everywhere I've
I don't know.
been, everyone's been super sick.
Yeah, I guess this year was really bad for the flu, and supposedly I don't know, I haven't really been sick for 3 years, really, like, actually catching a virus, so it was kinda
Yeah.
surprising, but
I don't know. Everyone's sick right now. It's going around. It's
yeah.
mid February, that time of year.
So what are we talking about today, dude? Like, we both have so much on our mind, we both talked about this beforehand, and I think we wanna cover some pretty important things that are occurring kind of in our personal life when it comes to decision making of our career. So, I mean, go ahead, what are you thinking?
Well, these topics are really good because I'm gonna guess that a lot of people are dealing with similar decisions and thoughts nowadays, especially with, right now the hiring market's doing really good in the 121 world especially, and there's a lot of opportunity if you want to move up or move to another airline. So I'm assuming the things that we've been thinking about and batting back and forth in our heads, a lot of people are probably dealing with similar thoughts. So it'd be good to discuss. So let's start off. We got two topics we wanted to discuss today, and so the one I've been racking around in my brain is deciding whether or not I want to move to a different carrier. I'm kind of in a unique position in life because I spent 7, 8 ish years working in the corporate world and just 135, 91 stuff and just getting getting the crap kicked out of me. Nobody cared. I got paid not enough. People trying to get me to fly broken equipment every day. With the exception of my time as a contractor, which was great. But that brings a whole different level of stress, like we talked about with Wade and Connor, where you're always chasing the next job, that kind of stuff. And so everything's got a trade-off. But, whether or not, the carrier I'm at right now, I've got, for having only been here a few years, I've got amazing seniority, basically get to pick my schedule. I can't upgrade right now, but I'm choosing not to take an early upgrade just because I'm finally enjoying for the first time in my aviation career the quality of life, in the sense of
Yeah.
I get the days off I want. I get to pick my schedule, pick who I want to fly with. If I take an upgrade right now, I'll be a really junior captain, probably, definitely get stuck in a base I really don't want to be in.
Brutal.
And then I'll be back to commuting. Whereas right now I drive to work. And so, the only reason I've thought about it so much, and I'm like, the only reason I take the upgrade right now for is the money. And like, that's really not the right reason to take the upgrade. I mean, and so that's where I'm kind of racking my brain of like, well, I'm kind of in this spot where it's like, I could take the upgrade and then go sit for probably a couple of years, maybe as a reserve, having a commute, you know, or, maybe in a year or two, I can hold a low level line in a base that I would still be commuting pretty far to, or I stay as an FO, not making as much money, but doing, all right, or, do I make a move to another carrier that I can get into probably sometime this year where I'd be making significantly more money, but then I'm back to sitting reserve, anywhere I go.
And commuting.
Commuting, most likely. Yep. Actually, with, almost definitely commuting, depending on where I decided to go. And yeah, I'm making way better money. I'd be making much better than I'm making now. But then, I've been, and this is where I wanted to talk this out with you so that other people that are thinking about this can also see the realities. I have friends at all the legacies, all the big carriers, and they all have been there a few years now, and some are still sitting reserve after 2 or 3 years. And so it's like, well, if I go to another carrier, I'm commuting to sit reserve again. I'm making more money, and in the long run, sure, potentiality is good for it, but I'm in a unique scenario where I'm 40. You know, I've got 25 years left if I wanted to go to 65, but I don't. Realistically, I want to be able to choose, in 10 to 12 years whether or not I want to keep working full time as an airline pilot or not, and trying to get my financial stuff in order to do that. So as you can see, as I talk it out, there's all these different factors where a lot of
So
people
many variables.
if money's the thing, then go where the money's at, right?
It's
Because
not
that
so
gets you there in
easy.
10 years, but it's not that easy because then I go, you know, I go suck that for, several years as a junior reserve guy. Yeah, I'm making more money, but my life sucks sitting there getting abused again back on a reserve. It's tough because now this is the first time in my career where I don't have to do that. So I don't want to give that up,
Yeah.
to go start that all over again. And so these are all things that I've been trying to think out and, okay, what's the best move? Jordan Peterson says it best. I think I've said this on here before. You have two decisions to make and they're both wrong. So
Yeah.
you got to pick your poison, right? And it's like, well, when I left corporate aviation, like I think we said with Hugh, I took a 75% pay cut to come to the airlines because I wanted the quality of life. And so if I take an upgrade now, or if I make a move to another carrier right now, it's for money, and I'll be sacrificing quality of life again. And for me on a personal level, that's the biggest reason I have not pulled the trigger to make any changes to this point. It's because of that. It's like, well, I finally got that flexibility, and I'm making enough money to live okay. I everybody would like to make more money, right? Yeah, I would love to make
Sure.
more money, but I'm not willing to give up a decent quality of life to do that again. If I was younger, I probably would be willing to do that. And for all the guys in their 20s that don't have a wife and kids and don't have those roots set down, heck yeah, man, go for it.
100%.
Definitely go
Yeah.
for it. I would too. But now that I'm setting roots down and a little older and I've had the crap kicked out of me for a while, I'm like, I
Let's
know
not go
it's not.
back to doing that.
Yeah, I know it's not worth it. And it's like Einstein's definition of insanity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what do you think?
So obviously there is a large airline opening their hiring window coming in the early March. If you don't know, just look it up. You'll figure it out. I don't want to say the company's name just because, but everyone knows what's going down. And so I think what we really have to discern when we look at a topic like this, because I'm thinking the same thing, right? I'm 27 and I got a lot of time, but then I also have a lot of variables, 2-year-old wife, bought a new house, and then also a new kid on the way. Do I really want to go back to sitting reserve outside a base and a shrinking base for that company? Probably not. Or do I want to
I've wanted
stay?
to ask you this question, so I'm glad we're talking about it on the
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. And so we look at it from that point. My company is the largest growing airline in Atlanta. Okay. So when you look at that, I don't know. What does that look like? So I think it comes from anyone who makes this decision. If you really boil it down, you look at, do you want to go to a place like what's forcing you to want to move on for one? Figure out internally like what you're not satisfied in life with, whether it be like Scott said, money, whether it be when that comes down to work rules, how many days off are you guaranteed, and all those things. So really looking at the contract of what your labor group has produced. Secondly, I think it looks if you run the numbers based upon current assumptions with no black swan events, which is again, this is why these numbers are kind of fugazi.
Predict that,
You
yeah.
can't predict any of this, so it's really that's why people say you can't really know until you retire, until if you know you made the right decision or not, because you're going off of skewed variables that really don't hold up. Like every single day that passes, those variables can change in an instant in this
Yeah.
career field. So, let alone anything to do with AI and single pilot, if that ever comes down the line 15, 20 years from now, whatever, that's a different conversation. But if we look at it from that point of view, you really are looking at what's going to define my point from right now, switching of what does my life look like now, if I can assume so, at this current airline, and trying to measure that through the variables that you do know and a current pay structure and how the company is doing financially and kind of predicting the future in one bucket. And then secondarily, you're trying to look at the other bucket and say, what does my life look like there? And then the last data point I really think that comes down, and we'll talk about this later, is which one could I retire with more money at, or which one can I retire faster at in terms of getting to your number? And so if we look at those variables, you can do some mental math and rough math on the end goal of what is my number I need to be, and run the calculations based upon average salaries depending on how much you want to work, along with your 401k contribution. And that company that we're talking about has, I think it's 18% going up to 19% next year. And the
Mm.
second year FO can clear $250,000 without really trying. So if you start quantifying those different numbers and all those different things, you could probably get to the number a lot quicker. But then at the carrier that we're at, it's in contract negotiations, and it's like, okay, well, what does the future look like after the company can get into a more healthy financial situation and going forward from there? So like there's all these variables, and I think for the average person, they look at the right now perspective of being like, what will benefit my life? I wouldn't even say right now. I take that back, because right now, because like you said, you're going to go back to community to reserve. And so what does that life look like in the next 5 years, I think, versus the sacrifice it takes in those 5 years to get to a better financial position and better for your life. So, I think when that it all boils down, I think what people struggle with is, should I even apply? Do I even want to entertain it? And what I always tell people is this: you don't have an opportunity in front of you until you literally have a CJO and you are 2 weeks away from going. And that point of view, like, nothing matters.
Right.
So I always think it's better to entertain every offer or every opportunity there is until you, and realistically, right, if you know you're not going to go work at Hawaiian Airlines, for example, and move to Hawaii back when they were only there,
Right.
well, yeah, well, I don't apply, because if you get
Right.
an application for whatever reason, you actually go to the interview, be like, yeah, I'm not going to move here and I live in Atlanta. I'm not going to do that realistically.
Well,
But
and
for
you're
the carrier,
stealing a slot from somebody else who's willing to do it too.
yeah, exactly. So my point of view is, with the carrier that we're talking about, there's a lot of data points in terms of, like you said, hey, you're going to be on reserve for a period of time, but then also, we just had a couple other people on the podcast that actually worked at that carrier, and if you talk to them, they're like, "Yeah, actually, on reserve, I know almost all my reserve assignments for trips before I even leave to go." So, reserve is a little bit different at that company when it comes to you're not just sitting there waiting to get used for, I don't know, for 10 days out of the month and all of that. And so, like, there's a lot of variables at play,
But
and I
it's
think Go ahead.
and not to cut you off, but it's not even that, man. It's like, it's one thing like sit reserve and base, right? Like or sit reserve where you live. That's
Yeah.
totally different dynamic. It's and knowing your reserve schedule in advance, sure, that's great and all, but it comes down to how long do you have to commute to reserve somewhere? And then how long are you going to have to commute to align somewhere else until you can hold how long realistically is it until you're able to hold that in the base where you live again? How many years are we talking? And for both of us at that carrier, or that those bases are relatively senior at that carrier that we're talking about.
I think I would move
So
back to Phoenix, to be honest with you.
yeah, exactly. You'd have to consider moving to another base, and for
But
me it's
yeah.
different. Like I've just made the decision less than 6 months ago to buy a house and settle down somewhere I wanted to be finally. And it's like, I really don't want to pick up my life and move again. Now
Yeah.
that I'm setting roots down and, you know, I've got things going good here where I live. I really don't want to start that over again. It's especially now that I'm older, it's even, more challenging to do that all over again. At least emotionally it is. So, and I want to touch back on the variable of fear we were talking about, like that it sucks because you can make all these amazing choices, and that's another reason I haven't pulled the trigger is it's like, sure, everything's going great right now, and knowing my luck, I'm freaking Mr. Bad Luck over here. I'll make the move. The
So
economy's in
do
tank.
do the opposite of what Scott does is what you're telling us to do.
Right. It's the inverse Kramer.
Yeah.
So whatever I invest in, don't invest in.
All right. Oh, that's
And
funny.
but no, in my luck, it's like I'll go there, everything's honky dory, and then halfway through my initial training, the economy will crash, and I'll be stuck as the bottom plug at that company for 6 years.
Yeah.
Going, oh, I could have stayed where I was at and been super senior, relatively speaking. And so that's for me, that's another factor that I'm struggling to take into account is like
Can I throw something out there really quick
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so let's look at our company. They had a huge growth curve coming up where it was going to be like 100 airplanes in the next 4 years, which is really almost a doubling of the airline.
Right.
Overnight, they basically cut it in half with one announcement and said, "We're going to restructure things and all that kind of stuff." Okay, well, that significantly changes my analysis and my variables of what I had planned for and what I had wanted to do when it comes to my quality of life and what my expectations were, right? So those things can change, like I said, overnight. And I have no idea how that's going to actually work out. And so those are ever changing. And I think there's only so much you can look at in the future other than like, am I happy with what I'm doing now? And I don't know. I just don't know how to quantify a yes or a no. You know what I mean? Like there's so many different guys that will say, "Oh, well, this is the most important thing, the money," right? Well, the money can be taken away. And it's
Yep.
like, okay. So in the end of the day, the airline industry is pure luck for the most part of what companies succeed, what don't. Look at Spirit; those guys 7 years ago were thinking they were the king of the castle in that sense.
Well, and
Um,
they were at the time,
yeah,
but then it
yeah,
turned around.
yeah. And so, everyone going to a legacy at this moment is thinking they're hot shit. And I agree, they're hot shit at the moment. But, I talked to guys that have flown at United and they got furloughed 2 times within a 7-year period or 5-year period.
Yep.
And then they said, "F it, I'm gonna go to this other carrier that we're at now," and they've had no issues. So
Right.
it's just really interesting. You really don't know how things are gonna happen, and I think we're gonna continue to see a lot of change in the industry, and so I don't know. I mean, what's the saying? "Magic 8 ball is foggy," or "My crystal ball is foggy."
No.
It's
Yeah.
and it's almost like as you gain more wisdom in this industry, you start to realize that there's how little you really do know and how little you can predict. You know what I mean? Until it starts to happen. And I think it's really important too that you don't take advice from people that are one emotional about the subject,
Mhm.
thinking that they work at a carrier that's supreme in that sense, or
Mhm.
that they think they're hot shit in that way, being like, "Oh, you have to come here. You're not a real pilot unless you fly, XYZ Airways." But do you know what I mean? I think that's one piece of advice I would give to anyone is be really careful on who you take advice from because I think everyone's advice is skewed, obviously, from their own life events and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know, man. So you're saying it's just the money, and if I mean,
You
let's
just
go through the variables
you
because I'm
just
sure
brought
other
up
people
the
feel it.
Yeah, and you just brought up the biggest point, which is like everybody's decision making or everybody's goals different, everybody's life's different, everybody's reasons for doing one thing or another are different, right? And that's why it's so like challenging, like you said, can't listen to everything everybody's telling you. I fly with guys who tell you get out of here, go to Delta right now since they're hiring, get in, or then I fly with guys who were in that United pool you were talking about, where they've got furloughed multiple times, and then even they chose to stay where they were at instead of getting recalled because they got screwed. Fool me once, shame on me, right? Kind of thing. And like,
Yeah,
and so it, there's so there's no right answer for everybody. It
yeah,
it varies, and so I would say, for you got to look at your own personal situation. And in my scenario, this is why it's like all the outside influence when I talk to people is like, what are you doing? Get out of here. Go to the pinnacle place. Get in there now. It's and I'm sitting there going, but I left somewhere else to come here for the quality of life, which I finally have. And, I don't want to leave to go start that over again to spend several more years getting kicked around. Sure, I'd make more money, but I'm not going to be happier doing that because I've been there and I know what it's like to be the plug getting kicked around, and I don't want to do that again because I'm finally getting somewhat comfortable in life, you know. And does that breed complacency? That's the question then I
huh.
ask myself, right? Am I just getting complacent? Am I is staying the wrong decision? I don't know. And the
I think
reality is, yeah, go
I
ahead.
think for me, what I've kind of boiled it down to is I need an opportunity to be the right decision short term, where it's the next 7 to 10 years of my life that it needs to make sense and give me stability.
Hmm.
Raising a family is changed my perspective on what it means to, go to work and do what I do. And as I have a 2-year old, and now that he's finally kind of more aware of the world, it makes you kind of gain a different perspective, being like, okay, these moments happen once, and sooner rather than later, he's going to say, he already knows when I'm gone, but like you really start to have kind of those things exponentially increase. And so, I mean, you saw my schedule next month. I am home literally every single night and I do one leg and I come back. I mean, if you showed that to someone at a lot of these airlines, that's worth a shit ton of money, I think. And
That's normally you have to be at a place for 15, 20 years
20
to beat
years.
that schedule.
But again, that could go away in a day. They could say, actually, these are really a bad idea, and let's go change the whole operation. And it's all 4 days and 5 days now.
Yeah,
So
that's
this is,
at any carrier too. You
yeah.
know,
So it's a hard data point to say of being like, wow, like this is a great quality of life and all those. Like how, and that's why it feels like it's just all a wash, you know, where sooner rather than later, every airline pilot for the most part makes a good living. If you look at
yes.
everywhere else in the American
Outside of
economy,
our industry, yes.
yeah. And like you can support a family on basically every 121 job, pilot job there is, you can support a family and be a
Comfortably.
single income provider. It
Yep.
might not be a luxury lifestyle, but you can support your family. And I'm telling you from experience, from being a regional FO, supporting a family, you can do it. And so I guess my point of view is if you take away at certain point, money stops becoming a variable for me. And that's again a personal thing where okay, whether you make 250 grand versus 400,000, at a certain point, I think there's been studies actually done, the 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 actual satisfaction goes down quite a bit in terms of what people view as worth it.
Right.
And so there's a lot of people, if you look at it in corporate America, they could go and climb that corporate ladder, but they decide, why would I do that? Because I'm already satisfied with my life and I have way less responsibility in that sense. So it's a little bit different in our perspective, but I've kind of taken away that data point just because I know that as time goes on, we're going to get paid what we need to get paid. And we also have that lever for me and you, the luxury of knowing that there is a captain upgrade available at some point in time, right? And so that's a whole different variable set for deciding to upgrade or not. But the money, we still have total upward mobility as well. We have at least $120,000 additional income that is on the table, plus the 401k that will get you to the new number faster whenever you decide to take that, since you're already able to take it, right?
Mhm.
So if you take away that, what else are you kind of looking for outside of with that company? Is it because obviously the money will be better? Is it to retire earlier in that sense, to gain more time? Is that the main driving force? Or is it working for a reputable airline that you're proud to work for, I guess? It sounds bad, but Scott and I know the different challenges we have with our airlines. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's everybody at some point has that problem in their career,
yeah.
which is why most people ultimately leave to a bit different job at some point.
Yeah.
You know, they're tired of working for that company. I had the same problem in the 135 world. Just not being proud of the companies I worked for, which is a big reason I moved on from them. It wasn't most of the time it wasn't about money, because like you said, at some point, everybody has a number that allows them to live comfortably, and when you hit that number, it takes a decision, takes that factor out of the decision. I have my number of, once I hit this point, everything beyond that's just a gravy train,
Yeah.
and it's kind of irrelevant at that point. At that, I factor quality of life over money at that point. And, the reality is, even at our current carrier, I'll hit that number real quick. Here in the next probably couple years, I'll have that number. And so then it's
S-
irrelevant completely, because then it's like, well, that takes money out of the factor, which is great. Not most people, not in our industry, and the average working person doesn't ever get to that point.
No.
So when you hear guys bitch and moan about something, oh, we don't make enough money, this, it's like, dude, we make more
Yeah.
than most people ever will to work way less. So, and those guys have never had that perspective because they've been, living in the airline life their whole career. They never worked another job. So, the outside perspective is a big factor on this decision making, life experience and all that, but it's tough, man. There's no one size fits all answer, which makes it difficult.
It's all
If
based
there
upon a lot of
Yeah.
personal variables for yourself. And so anyone telling you to make a certain decision is wrong because they don't know your personal variables in that sense. So I think that's what makes it a very, let's just say a better term, like it's a personal decision on what you end up doing. So I had a guy a couple months ago. He was a captain about to retire from Orlando. Doesn't have any kids and been at our airline for a long time. Yeah. Been at our airline for a long time. And anyways, the first thing he told me when I walked in the flight deck, "Where's your application to the legacies? You have to leave here. You need to do it." And I got to talk to him. He's never had kids, been divorced twice, which whatever. Divorce happens. I'm not trying to say anything, but from my point of view, I'm just saying, okay, well, why am I taking advice from a guy that has lived a completely different lifestyle than me, has completely different morals than me? And I think a lot of young guys look at these older guys and see them all bitter, but you got to understand that they're
It's
making
not
a good
your
enough.
fault they have 3
Yeah.
cars and a cocaine problem.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what I tell these guys.
Yeah, so you gotta look outside of aviation that a lot of these guys or girls have made bad decision making throughout their life and have led them to this bitterness. So I look at people from my perspective, and you can be happy about anywhere you go in this industry. It's just making your life kind of fit around and work within the job that you're in. If you go and you live in Missoula, Montana, and your only base is JFK, yeah, I mean your life is going to be hard. But if you move somewhere that's maybe one lake for a commute, or live in a drivable commute, you fix your problem. So really anything can work. It's just you have to kind of give the significance of the job inform your life within
So,
the job as well, if that makes
and that's,
sense.
I mean, to play devil's advocate there, it's like I know 2 guys that I used to fly with regularly here who have two-leg commutes that live one guy lives in Montana, the other guy
Dude,
lives
I would kill
in
myself.
middle
I
of nowhere.
literally
They're some of the happiest guys I've ever flown with, though.
yeah.
They've, like their attitude was like, "Yeah, I come in the day early, that way I'm not stressed out. I know I gotta show up, and instead of trying to make it in that morning, I just come in the evening before and spend the night in base the night before."
See, this is a perfect example though, Scott,
And
because for me, like, I would literally quit the job if you told me I had a 2 late commute. I would do it without question tomorrow. And so this is what I mean. Everyone has their personal variables.
yep.
So don't go and listen to everyone. So continue on. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just want to make
No,
that
you're
point.
good. Yeah, that's just the point I'm trying to make is it's like it's not a one size fits all. It
Yeah.
depends on your personal life, your attitude, your everything. These guys, they could have a terrible attitude. Oh, I got to do two-leg commute, and they're just like, you know what, whatever. Like that's just the job I have to have the lifestyle I get to enjoy because of it. And these 2 guys, they really appreciate the career they have because of it.
Yeah.
And they've obviously hit that number in their life, and they and it keeps them happy. And people, it's especially men. We do need our space, especially if you have a family and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming for them, factors is like it gives them that personal space too. Being away for, to them it's not that extra day that's like, oh cool, that's a day I'm not working, and it's also a me day.
Yeah.
I could see that being a factor in their lives. I'm just assuming it is. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's my guess. But, like, for me, I'm like, yeah, just commuting one leg now that I don't have to do it anymore seems daunting, even though I was doing it for so long.
Yeah.
Two legs seems unreasonable to me, but I also don't live that far out from a place where I would need to do 2 legs. To each his own. I mean, there's no right answer for everybody. I know I've said that multiple times already today, but for you and me, we have different goals in life too.
That's the
Mine's to
point of
try to
being
be able to
human.
retire in 10 years,
Yeah.
you know.
Mine's
Or
being able to survive till my kids are out of the house. And I just am
you
starting that
got you
journey.
got 18 years now to do.
Yeah.
Oh, probably longer than that.
I got
Kids stay at home till their 20s, mid 20s now.
I mean, you gotta talk to Mariah and tell her ask her how many kids she wants at that point. I don't know, she just might just keep wanting to go. So, yeah, maybe I do need to start applying to these other airlines. Maybe the
She get a
money
job.
is, I'll be sure to pass that along to her.
Yeah, please.
So, I think one thing that coming away from this conversation that I really have kind of valued, one thing that I think that boils down for me is I learned pretty early on in my regional days that I do not like 4 to 8 trips consistently and doing those. That's what makes this job incredibly difficult. And I honestly think that for me, if I continued onward and those variables changed, I actually think I would probably leave this career field and try to go do something else. And I think my perspective now is, can I maximize the amount of money I can make when I'm younger and all of that? That way I can have my 401k, even if it's not fully perfect,
Mhm.
that even in when I'm 37 or 40 years old, since I have so much time available to me, that even if I said, okay, all these variables changed, can I really get to the next 15 to 20 years of my life to where I can basically provide for my family and provide a childhood and all of that kind of stuff? And after that, if I really don't want to do this job, I can go and I have uh, my retirement, 65, 75% of the way there, and I can go and kind of do a different job at that point too. The reason I worked so hard was also because I wanted to get a house when I was younger. So that way my note would be due earlier on in life to where I have a house paid off. So really for me, I know this sounds crazy. It's as far out as I am as a 27-year-old, I already am starting to look at an exit strategy of what does it actually take to be done with this job? And I don't know if that's just sounds lazy to a lot of people if you talk to, someone working in corporate America, but we'll get into this in a minute, but maybe now, but I don't know. I just kind of been looking at the next 35 years of my life being like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it that long doing gear down and checklists and all that kind of stuff. It's inherently, like we talked about, one of the easiest jobs ever, but it's everything outside of the actual flying. It's your schedule changing every month. It's, I don't know, just going to training and knowing all these different things. And, it's real stress when there's, variables at play like really gusty winds and all those kinds of things. I just think about, I'm like, man, this is a long road ahead. And, I'm comfortable in the job. I've got my life figured out to where I'm really happy with, being able to raise a family and doing these turns. But I don't know, maybe that's a thing of adulting. And I know I'm an adult with a family, raising a family, but man, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to look at and be like, I don't know if I really want to work till I'm 65. I don't know if I really want to have just this continual kind of fatigue, this low level fatigue everywhere you go, and constantly worrying about, these airline or just everything the airlines bring. I think everyone understands what I'm getting at. I'm
Yeah.
not explaining it the best, but yeah, I don't know. I think that I don't need to necessarily get to a point where I can just retire off of this either. If I play my cards right, I can go and do almost a second career from aviation if I really wanted to,
Mhm.
if I got enough stability to and things changed where I was really unhappy in life. Because that's my big thing, man. Scott, I don't want to be unhappy in life. I look at some of the dudes I fly with and I'm like, why would I want to end up like you? And if I end up like you, no amount of money or time off is going to make me wanna live a life like that, because you only live this life once. That's my point of view. And so if I start acting like that and the job is the main reason doing that to me, then obviously I need to change my life and pray to God that my kids are out of the house and my responsibility with them as a provider is over in that sense.
Mhm.
I don't know. That was a lot, but that's my emotional take on everything, I
It's
guess.
good. It's good
Yeah,
for people
man.
to hear what you're thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, do you think other people feel the same way? Like, am I in a unique position
No,
in that sense?
no, there's tons of people I'm sure that are listening that feel the same way you do.
Yeah.
You're smarter than most people because you're starting to think about these things in your 20s. I didn't. I didn't think about that till I was in my mid 30s, man. You know,
Yeah.
so you're way ahead of the game compared to a lot of people. You're looking at the exit strategy, going, "Do I really want to be a working sucker my whole life?"
I'm not trying to complain about the job, but there's a lot of things that we sacrifice in this job for the money and for doing the things of passion. And so I just don't know if I have the passion level to make it for 40 years or whatever it takes. So
A
we'll
good
see.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least you're thinking about it. A lot of people don't think about that stuff, and then they end up miserable, and they wonder why. You're at least trying to get ahead of the game, which puts you in a position above most people.
So I think when we talk about that, staying with this airline that we're at, can I have a really good quality of life to where a lot of those factors start to kind of fade away, where I can work sooner rather than later? If I want to stay FO and money isn't a factor, where I can have a great family life and maybe not make as much, but I can be bidding the top 10% of FOs and I can work 15 days a month, not even maybe 12 days a month doing island turns, 3 days a week, Monday through Wednesday. And now as my kids get older, I can go to every single one of their events. I can go do whatever I want and I have complete freedom in my own life. And I don't have the responsibility as a captain for a lot of different things. And I know that's not that big of a deal, but I mean, the right seat can get real freaking cushy depending on how you look at it. That doesn't mean you don't take your job seriously, but man, I mean, it's a different job when you're in the right seat than the left seat when things go wrong on the
It's
ground and
less
people.
responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why there's $100,000 pay gap between the two.
As I just had this conversation with a buddy of mine yesterday.
Yeah,
I was like, man, if I made 25% more
that's it.
as
Yeah.
FO here,
Yes.
I wouldn't leave the right seat. I've sat in the
Yeah.
left seat. In the corporate world, I was a captain for years. It's like, I don't need 4 bars, man. I'm happy walking in and swinging your gear and reading your checklists. And if something goes wrong, it's on the guy in the left seat.
You know why
Three
that is?
bars on my shoulder mean not my airplane. Like, awesome, dude. Not my problem. Yeah.
I think it comes down to having enough self-awareness and lack of, I don't know. I don't want people to think I'm sounding like an asshole when I say this, but there's some guys who crave the left seat because they're inherently narcissistic or have some kind of
Sure.
personality traits driven towards that.
Mhm.
And not everyone, there's a lot of laid back guys I fly with.
Oh, yeah.
And
Percent
just
of everyone is assholes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so I think my perspective in that is if you take away the fulfillment someone needs to be in control of a situation and be the head honcho, which there are some dudes and gals that feel that that fulfills them in life. For me and you, for example, that doesn't necessarily fulfill us, and that's not a required thing to make us happy in life. And so I honestly I told this to Mariah yesterday or a couple days ago. I said, honestly, with our contract, it if you go back to 2019 before prior to inflation, it's about 30% differential of what our earning power actually gives us in terms of buying power. So if you gave me, and don't tell this to Alpa, don't tell this to our contract negotiators, if you only gave me like 30% additional and counteracted that for the next couple of years and just consistently could counteract, 30% increase and held that for my entire career, I could be perfectly happy in that
Mhm.
sense.
All
It's
about the money.
no, it's not.
That's what
Like I said,
we keep trying to say here, everybody has their number, and it's not as high as you would think. And the guys that need, 500 grand a year or whatever it is, again, three ex-wives and a cocaine problem. Like that's not that's their choice. But for most people, you don't need that much more. We already make more money than most people outside of our career do. So,
because, like, to be honest, Scott, what are you gonna do? You're gonna have a better vacation, probably go from a four-star hotel to a five-star hotel. You're probably gonna have one extra sports car, and you'll probably have a couple additional other toys and more padding in terms of if anything goes wrong and you can't work forever in that sense, and you have a good LTD in that sense for
mhm,
long-term disability.
mhm,
There's a couple different factors in that sense, but like we talked about, I think if you can hit a specific number and you can stay within your means, you're gonna have a really kick-ass life. And I think about my dream is literally to show up as little as possible now and still have enough money to go do fun things and, live a good life, but not like I don't need an extravagant life. But, you know, people on the podcast, if you've been listening a while, everyone understands I worked way harder than I've ever worked last year and I will never be able to recreate that. And I'm kind of coming down being like, okay, well, now that I'm gaining the seniority and I'm a little bit farther behind Scott, I'm about 4 months away if I wanted to upgrade. Do I really want to do that? And I've had those conversations too with guys being like, is it worth doing an upgrade? And a lot of guys will say, well, you don't get called as much on reserve. Why not just take that extra money and do all those different things?
yeah,
And
but
I'm like,
commuting, if you can't hold
but let's
your
say you live in base. For me, I'm like, okay, well, do I want to sit on reserve for the next 4 years? Okay, well, now I'm a junior line holder doing red eyes, which I know that you're cool doing. I can't do.
sign me up.
Yeah, no, it's the death of me. And I just look at that. And then also as my kids get older too, being like, okay, well, now they have birthdays, now they have responsibilities. And don't I want to be a part of that? And that's
Mhm.
that for me personally, that's really important. Do I want to be able to see them have Christmas on Christmas? And I know everyone's like, well, you can change the date. There's something to be said about certain things with certain holidays and being a part of that. And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, those are my thoughts about it. And I know that everyone else my age is probably in a way different perspective. So
Maybe, I'm sure you'd be surprised. There's probably a group of people out there that are thinking the same way you are.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think we covered all that stuff pretty good. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there who are going through similar thought processes and trying to make decisions in life. And so, leave a comment, you know, create a discussion in the comments thread about it. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Let us know what you're thinking, or you could send us an email to chat about it, whatever works for you. But we really appreciate everybody listening and supporting us. We're coming up, we're almost a year in now. And so, it's been trying to get the schedules worked out. I'm sure we've talked about it several times. I'm just going to stop talking about it. We'll put out episodes when we put out episodes. you
I
know?
think everyone understands, man. Everyone's got a life.
and
Until
try to
until we start yeah, go ahead.
try to keep it as regular as we can, but yeah, like, subscribe. Those are the biggest things that help us out. We still don't monetize this yet.
Yeah.
And so liking and subscribing just helps us grow the channel, get out there to more people. And that's kind of all we're looking for right now at this point is just to grow it and get more people to listen and get, find more people that want to, you know, give us suggestions and
We wanna create a
people.
community,
Yeah.
we wanna create an aviation community in that sense with everyone involved, and we wanna make it a yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we can help people out along the way. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Give you guys knowledge that we didn't have when we were coming up, and hopefully it'll make your career a little bit easier than the people that came before you.
Yeah.
So thanks again, everybody, and we will catch you on the next one.
See ya.